Ben.
And this is a little show where we talk about some stories from a book that we found in Ben's grandpa's, Jeremy's attic.
Yes.
While we were rooting around, like we do.
Not in that order.
And this is a particularly special episode because last time we were looking through the attic, we found some like old war medals or something, and we sold them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't tell, this is better audio. Let's just say medals plus question mark equals new old microphone.
Yeah, equals better quality for you and for us, and who the hell cares what Grandpa Jeremy knows, because he doesn't listen to stuff. He can barely work a computer, let alone listen to a podcast. I mean, I love the guy, but the guy's he's an old fart. He thought those World War II medals were won a couple of years ago. Those things were dated back in the 1940s, people.
Was it the 40s?
It was the 40s. It was right after World War II.
I don't know years.
It was after World War II ended, and they just started giving out medals because they had so much. They had raw material, and just artillery shells. They did deconstructing and said, "Hey, there's some veterans that just ended a war. They deserve a little pep, you know, little bit of a pick me up from all the death and destruction they witnessed." So yeah. They just started kind of commissioning these medals to really anybody who fought. And the thing is, my grandpa Jeremy was not in any war. He claims he was because he has proof by the medals, but upon closer inspection, they actually say Howard Leidig, which is definitely not somebody that is in any way, shape, or form committed to any part of our family, or it's not any kind of pseudonym that he had. So
they also said "Made in China" on the back.
Right. So I mean, keep in mind, not anything that we really have, any kind of information about. But anyway, those fancy little trinkets that we found in the attic got us this phenomenal new microphone. So we're coming over to you through the interwebs. Live.
Coming at you live from a
studio near you.
A nice little apartment in Buffalo.
This is MCR.
Yeah, we are actually not in Grandpa Jeremy's library today.
No, we decided that since we pawned off a few of his possessions, we'd lay low for a while before we go back to the original locale.
Yeah, I think eventually he'll forget that he saw us doing that and chased us out of his house.
I mean, you can't really call it chasing. He was hobbling pretty bad.
Yeah.
For the most part, he lives in a wheelchair. He has a walker, but he chooses not to use it. And then also, for the record, he does not need the wheelchair. He's just incredibly lazy for his age.
I don't know about that. When he fell out, he was like crawling.
It's freaking Grandpa Jeremy!
What are you saying?
The guy lives in that chair. He doesn't need the chair, but when he gets out of that chair, he's going to have difficulties walking because he barely walks as it is.
Alright, so did you want to... Did you say what you wanted to say?
I said what I wanted to say. I'm just saying that Grandpa Jeremy does not need that wheelchair. The medals or the... I'm saying I was referring to the wheelchair.
Why are we talking about his wheelchair?
Because you said that he was, he had issues walking. Well, yeah, but at the same time, he doesn't need the wheelchair. Oh, fuck.
How old is he?
He's like 68.
Oh, really?
He messed around a bit as a teenager before he got into the quote-unquote war he was in, so...
So are you saying, like, he had your parents early?
Yeah.
Like, as a teenager?
He had my mom pretty early.
Teen Mom, the 1920s version. This week, Jessica and Jeremy are having internal strife.
Yes, it was a radio show back then. It was called Teen Pa. He was one of the He was one of the main characters because it was him who had the child.
Like Teen Grandpa.
Teen Pa.
Okay.
Yeah. Teen
like
Pappy.
These are gonna be people's grandpas all day.
Teen Pappy. And lo and behold, here we are, the illegitimate son of a radio talk show character.
He was a character.
What is my life? What is my life, folks?
You're the realization of a character.
Aren't I though?
You are, Ben. You're a character.
All right. Before we get any more off track, let's get focused on what these folks are here listening to today. The next story in our segment.
Okay.
Stories.
Yeah. This is podcast number 4 and maybe 5 as well. Seeing.
We've taken to enjoying the longer stories of this collection of tales that we've stumbled upon in an attic and quite honestly, Austin here can tell you even more than I can that this one's one hell of a tale.
One hell of a ride.
Oh yeah.
I usually am the one who finds the stories for the episode. Do you have your phone off?
I do.
I don't.
I'm seeing something that I like out of the corner of my eye, and I want to look past it and be like, I wanna.
You want to be part of that?
I want to be part of that, but I won't be because we're doing something.
This.
We're doing something important here.
Okay.
Something beautiful. We're making we're making a digital baby here.
Ooh. Yes.
That's gonna be
a little hot and bothered here.
Oh yeah. You know that infamous electronic rock band, Draft Funk? That's gonna be the next solo. Digital baby.
Digital baby.
Digital baby.
If it isn't already.
Ooh, you know they're working on it.
I hope so.
Those characters.
Yeah. That's nice. I like that. Okay, so this one is called Fate's Pail. And the way this works is Ben will interrupt at any time if he feels like he has something to say.
I have something to say.
What do you have to say, Ben?
I love this story.
You love it?
I love it.
This is one of your favorites.
I was so enamored by the tale that I was reading it out loud, and I was loving every second of it.
Oh.
I was like, I want this story. If it was an edible dish,
I would
eat it.
You would order it at a 5-star restaurant.
I would eat it at a 5-star restaurant.
Okay.
I would try my damnedest to regurgitate it just to eat it again, but then realize that it's better than that. It is like a fine hooker. You treat it some respect. You take it for what it is. Mm-hmm. You appreciate the art.
Of course.
You dedicate yourself to the craft that is providing you. And you just dive in once. You get one. Everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one.
It's true.
And I was, you know what?
What?
I don't even think I need to be here for this podcast.
Do you?
Because I read it once and I enjoyed it.
No, you have to be here.
This is for the folks.
Ben.
This is for the folks.
The folks?
The folks listening.
Like
our folks.
Our folks?
Our folks. That's what our following is called, the folks.
Oh, okay.
Like folklore, like fairy tales. They're called our folks.
Okay, that's cool. I'm chill with that. Okay, this one's called Fate's Pail. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. King Roy and his wife, Queen Suzanne, ruled over their little valley kingdom with humility and fairness to their subjects. Not a request went unanswered, and even when the answer was no, it came with a lovely explanatory letter written on the most gorgeous stationery. The royal couple was adored by their subjects, and the feeling was mutual, which is why it came as such a surprise that their firstborn daughter, Mona, was turning out to be such a piece of garbage trash. She was an alright enough baby, never intentionally crouching in places where she knew her parents would trip over her, or refusing to eat her ground haggis. She was rather unremarkable, actually. She would simply float along, doing all that was expected of her. This all changed, however, when she turned 2. After 730 days of being constantly doted on by her parents, and being told that the world was made for her, it became apparent that she took all of this quite literally. On the particular day in question, Mona was taken out to one of the sweet shops in the upper district of the kingdom as a special treat for not dying yet. When they arrived at the storefront, King Roy bent down on one knee and said to his daughter, "You may pick anything you wish from among the shelves of this fine establishment, for today, my darling little princess, you are 2 years old." Mona giggled with glee and, wriggling free from her father's embrace, burst through the doors of the shop. When the proprietor, a kind-hearted man by the name of Ammonia Stevenson, saw the royal little girl enter, he crouched down to greet her.
I have something to say.
Sure.
I appreciate the fact that a man who runs a candy store is named Ammonia Stevenson.
You appreciate it?
I appreciate that.
It's appreciated.
This man is a gentleman and a scholar. For sticking up with that kind of name, being like, you know what?
I can do it.
I can do this.
I can make it in this world.
As a candy shop owner, nonetheless.
Let me put something sweet in your mouth. My name's Ammonia Stevenson.
Let me rock your world with this rock candy.
Oh.
In your mouth. instead of Monia Stevenson.
Yeah, it's the dream. You know this probably represents the American dream. His struggle. We'll see where he goes in the book. Like maybe he's more of a influence. Maybe. Yeah. But sure. Like assuming the author lived in America.
That's maybe what he was referring to.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. When the proprietor, a kind-hearted man by the name of Ammonia Stevenson, saw the royal little girl enter, he crouched down to greet her. Much to his surprise, Mona took advantage of his stooping position and grabbed a hold of his finely ruffled collar, forcing his head to the ground. "Listen here, peasant!" said the princess with all the authority of a Mernivian warlord, as she rested her size 3 glittery blue shoes on the side of his face. "You shall receive from me an assortment of jelly flops, sour horse whispers, and whistle thumbs, as much as 3 bags will hold." When the poor man was released, he hurried himself, retrieving everything that was requested of him, tears rolling down his face. Poor guy.
You know, I can sympathize with poor Ammonia Stevenson, but at the same time,
because you're often bullied by little girls.
It's true, actually. Very true.
Just yesterday, Ben was walking by like the schoolyard, and a little girl called him out.
Yeah.
Said "you,"
and I looked back and forth, and I
was behind each shoulder, hoping it was someone else.
I was hoping that it was going to be someone bigger and intimidating, because I was saying, you know what, if I'm going to go down, I'd rather go down, having an excuse. But I shivered, and I turned around and looked down, and lo and behold, it was another one of these little girls, and they're just staring back at me, and they're like, "Hey, punk." And I was like, "Shouldn't you be in class?" They're like, "Never mind that." And I just stared at her like, am I supposed to, have a rebuttal here? And she kicked me in the shin several times.
Took your bus money.
She took my bus money. Yeah. The thing I needed to get back to my dear Grandpa Jeremy.
To your domicile.
To the dear domicile in which Grandpa Jeremy resides. To make sure he was still amongst the living.
Still kicking?
Still kicking.
But he was.
He was. But
when you eventually walked home.
Defeated. Broken. But I digress. As much as I can sympathize with poor Ammonia Stevenson, there is no greater sweetness than being able to rest a delectable whistle thumb on your tongue.
It's true.
It is.
I can only imagine.
It's like little firecrackers in your mouth.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Once all of the candy had been collected, the man stooped down again, but not quite as low this time, to hand Mona the heaping sacks. She took them from him with a little smirk on her face, and not so much as a thank you, as she walked outside to where her father was waiting for her. The good king never found out about this incident. After all, who would dare present such a rude idea to the ruler of lands? The citizens, however, did not remain so ignorant. Word spread like the plague across the land, until people as far as the outer swamps knew what a little brat the royal daughter was. This trend continued as Mona grew in age, so her parents never knew to discipline her. Even up to King Roy's dying day, the man remained ignorant. So backward was his perception that he decided, with his last breaths, to proclaim Mona as the heir to the throne. This decision, of course, didn't go over well among all of those that had heard of the girl's misdeeds, but no one was as miffed as Michael, her younger brother, and the previous heir. No matter how upset anyone was, it was too late for them to convince good King Roy that his decision was anything but immaculate. May it not be misinterpreted that Michael was any less garbage than Mona, but his terrible personality wasn't as widely known as that of his sister. He, after all, had been under constant instruction ever since he was born, in order to be prepared for his imminent leadership role. In spite of the constant supervision and tutelage that Michael received, however, he failed to absorb any of it. Instead, he learned how to be entitled and daydreamed the hours away. This, on top of the fact that he was incredibly dim-witted, did not make him much more suitable for the task of ruling a kingdom than his sister was. Mona, on the other hand, happened to be a very clever girl, and would often revel in how simple it was to torment her younger brother. Michael's a boy.
We don't know much about Michael in the story, folks.
he could be anything. Alright. But she would revel in how simple it was to torment her younger brother. Okay.
There we go.
She once convinced him that if he kept his eyes open for too long on a sunny day, they would dry up and fall out of his head. For longer than anyone would care to admit, Michael would wander the grounds of the castle with his eyes shut, poking at them to assure himself that they were still there, and running into various trees and shrubs. These collisions did nothing for his mental acuity.
You know, I haven't talked about her much since she was deported, but my sister Whitney, who is now serving her time, toiling in the small world ride.
Oh,
yeah,
small world ride. I'm sorry.
Who's toiling away in the small world ride, paying her time,
selling turkey legs
to the local meat eaters. She used to play a similar trick on me, but with much darker intentions. You see, what she would do is she would say, if you looked up at the sun long enough, it was considered good luck, and it was a point in which I was very
impressionable.
It was very impressionable in my life. She's like, that sun is actually a magic ball, and if you stare at it long enough, you'll see whatever you most desire, and as it comes to you, all you have to do is keep staring at it, and it'll be yours. So I would stare there, and it would hurt real bad, and I was like, I can almost see what I want, and at the time it was a Nintendo 60... Oh, yeah, a...
Nintendo 64?
A Monaco 82 console. And the coolest video game console as a kid that you could have, a Monaco 84. And, you know, I was so close to having it. I was like, I want it so badly. And then right when she saw that I was reaching up for that thing, she took a log and smacked me in the back of the head, and I became unconscious. And when I woke up, I was in the hospital. And still impressioned by the fact that I could have had what I truly wanted most in this world. I was in a deep depression, as well as stuck in a hospital bed for a few days afterwards.
It's upsetting.
It is very upsetting, but you know, I learned something.
What?
All sisters, no matter how kind they seem, are just the slightest bit garbage trash.
Garbage trash. Just like Mona.
Wow. And, you know...
Full circle.
It cuts deep. You know? There are a lot of reasons why I love this story.
Is this striking a personal chord for you, then?
You know, I'm getting all them feels right now.
Oh, wow.
Just, you know, it's bring me back to my childhood.
Yeah, I didn't mean to work you up. I'm sorry.
It's happy thoughts, man. I love times like that.
Ben's eyes are welling up right now.
I'm getting a little bit puffy. I'm allergic to emotion.
Yeah. We can continue here. It was a culmination of Michael's repressed childhood anger and dull-minded greed, which led him to decide that he would reclaim the throne by any means necessary. With a mind that had received one too many concussions, he decided that he would do so, using the power of a magical item he heard about in stories of his youth. Legends tell of a mysterious vessel with the ability to grant those who drink from it anything they desire. This vessel is infamous by its very nature, and anyone who has ever found themselves around a storytelling fire late at night, or hunkered down in a pub where the barkeep is feeling particularly chatty, has heard a tale from its sordid past. The amount of times that this vessel has changed hands is uncertain, but what is certain is that everyone who had the perceived fortune of coming across it met with their end. They didn't necessarily meet with their end swiftly, but their lives definitely did come to an end at some point after coming into contact with this tricky artifact. This danger was well known among the common folk who peddle its stories, and it keeps them from the temptations that the vessel has to offer. They are satisfied living what meager lives they have, knowing that they are more suitable than being subjected to an unpredictable curse. This fact, however, does not dissuade all people. In some hearts, desire grows too strong to be discouraged by the promise of ill fate, no matter how terrible. This undoubtedly is a shame, but what kind of tales would humanity have if not for these types of people? The only problem with the prince's brilliant plan, however, was that the last tale concerning the vessel took place over 1,000 years before, and it had since slipped off the map. This, however, was based on what he had learned from the stories that had made their way through all the checks and balances used by the royal minstrels to be sure that they were fit for the virgin ears of young royalty. This limited the volume of stories that he ended up hearing from the multitudes to 10 or 12 short tales. Michael was 16 at this point, and he decided that he would see what he could find out by exploring the places he was never allowed to go while his parents were still among the living. As he had never partaken in the fiery beverages that the guards had often drank, spending their nights away, he figured he would lead 2 goats with 1 staff and start his search at some of the pubs located along the castle's outer wall in the inebriation district. When he arrived on the scene, he was thrilled at the amount of debauchery and heavy-handedness that was taking place all around him. Michael had always been a rambunctious one and couldn't wait to dive in. With a smirk on his face, he sidled up to the bar and recited a line that he often heard among the red-faced men that trained him in combat. "What else have you got on tap?" The one-eyed barkeep stared at him blankly until Michael placed a gold dren down in front of him. As if cued by the sound of metal hitting wood, the man sprung alive, putting a crooked smile on his face and replying in the most cheery tone he could imagine. "Well, the Corpulent Goat's Run has been quite popular among the patrons this evening. I'll give you a sample of that and we can go from there." As he finished his spiel, he took a glass out from the stock at his knees and polished it with some sort of pelt from an animal that the prince didn't recognize, before dripping a bit of frothy bluish ale into it. Without much of a thank you, he took it from the man, draining the glass with 1 gulp, and instantly fell in love. Before calling it a night, Michael ordered 7 more glasses of the frothy liquid, exhausting his gold dren and completely forgetting why he had come to the pub in the first place. After a night spent in the comfort of the inn upstairs, Michael's head had cleared enough to ask some of the other patrons what they knew about the item which he sought. The first woman he approached looked up at him with a toothless smile and said, "When I was a little girl, some 200 years ago, I remember a man named Aaron Madragi. Right full he was. He would always brag about having the vessel and how he hadn't drank from it yet. Apparently he was waiting until he thought of something special to use it for. This went on for quite some time, until one day he went missing. I learned later that some traders from the Orient caught wind of what a valuable item he had, and they convinced him to part with it in a rather violent manner. People say they took it back to their home country for some wealthy feudal lord." After she finished speaking, she turned her deeply wrinkled face back to the porridge in front of her and continued sucking down the thick substance.
Just like that, huh?
Mm-hmm. I think we should start doing sound effects to add depth to the story.
That delicious thick substance of, what was it, porridge?
Porridge.
Oh.
No, like the 3 bears.
You know, nothing has ever made me want porridge more than that passage right there. Something thick and lumpy.
Thick substance.
Thick, lumpy substance. Curdling down your throat.
Oh, curdling. What's in your throat? Oh, God. Alright, Michael was disappointed, to say the least, that what he needed had been in his backyard far more recently than he had thought, yet it had been ripped away from him again just so suddenly. 200 years, however, was a long time ago, and although the lands just outside the castle may have been sucked dry of their stories, this didn't mean that the bars and pubs farther out lacked fresh tales. Motivated by this thought, as well as a desire to experience what ales the other establishments had to offer, he sought one of the royal steeds and began his quest. The story of this time spent at the next few drinking holes played out much the same way. He would go into a bar with the pure intention of asking around about the object he sought, but he would inevitably drink far too much and wind up spending the night in a nearby inn. When he awoke, he would scramble to find anyone that could give him even the smallest bits of information, as to make the stay in the town somewhat less of a waste. His search, however, only gained him a sheep's stomach fashioned into a flask and a much lighter purse. On one of the rare nights that he actually managed to question some of the pub patrons, an old man thrust the stomach into his hands after telling him he knew nothing of the vessel, saying, "May your throat never be dry," and then teetering away in the opposite direction. The prince was confused at what he was holding until he realized that this newfound object could be exactly what he had been seeking all along. With this thought in his head, he promptly made his way up to the bar and had the flask filled up with some spirit or other. "Now I can drink whenever and wherever I please," he thought to himself gleefully as he took the first swig of what he thought would promise to be a long and happy relationship. The rest of this particular night was a blur, and turned out to be an otherwise useless portion of Michael's quest.
Haven't we all been there, folks?
Where?
The bottom of a sheepskin.
I know I have. Mm-hmm. I know Mother, before a day at kindergarten, would fill me up a sheepskin with some good old goat's milk.
With some adult grapevine juice.
For you? I don't... Ooh. What was it?
Ooh. The adult grapevine juice. You never had that before?
No.
Ooh, it's the sweetest nectar with a bit of a punch to it. Yeah. Every day.
How old were you?
Old enough to know it wasn't normal grapevine juice.
Great. Adult grapevine juice.
Adult grapevine
That's
juice.
what she told you it was?
Where's
your mother now, Ben?
We will not discuss that on this podcast.
Sorry.
That's a completely other story.
Did I broach a personal subject?
She is dealing with her own...
Demons?
Stories.
Oh.
She's doing her own thing right now. Are we recording?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, just making sure.
We might have stopped recording right there, actually.
Okay.
When it was, lagging.
But my mother always told me that essentially what it was normal grape juice, but part of the vine got stuck in there, and that's why it was so potent. And I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. Thanks, Mommy dearest. And I would take it into kindergarten and be like, look what I got. And then all the kids would snicker and be like, oh, this is spoiled grape juice. And I'd be like, you kids don't know. This is grapevine juice. And I would chug it, and I would get super silly. And I would...
See, everyone would love you.
Everyone would love me.
I remember that.
I was the coolest kid. I would pick up chairs and throw them. Kid. And I would wear...
Often hitting me with the chairs.
I mean...
I was just trying to drink my milk.
Your milk, yeah. See... Austin and I come from completely different homes here, people. But, let's bygones be bygones.
But after after a few of those incidents, you came from a completely different home.
We won't say whose
when you were taken away by child services.
We won't say whose family was totally cooler. It was mine, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's true.
We
don't talk about my family on this, do we?
We
don't.
Yeah. Thing is, my parents knew how to treat a kid, and that's with awesome adult grapevine juice.
And tons of high fives.
Tons of high fives on my butt. I was apparently the bad kid.
I was not given the grapevine juice.
The grapevine juice.
I snagged it.
Oh. As a kid, there is nothing sweeter, folks.
No. Well, okay. I'm just going to continue here. Actually reminds me of you in... grade school, when, you would show up every day to class with a pack of cigarettes rolled in your sleeve.
Ah, my Mentoros.
Yeah.
Loved them. I would smoke couple throughout the day, and I would also have an extra pack in my back pocket that everyone thought was my wallet. But the thing was, I sold my wallet for that pack of cigarettes.
The worst part of this story, folks, is that...
That's all completely true, but the other worst part about it is...
Even worse than that is that our teacher was actually the person who would buy Ben these cigarettes.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's pretty messed up.
And, I didn't know the value of, wallets to cigarettes by that point. So he's like, hey, little Benny, have a couple cigarettes on me. And I was like, hey, what's the occasion? He's like, oh, I'm just looking for a couple of new friends, you know, also a few wallets. You got one of those, you know, filled with dollar bills? And I was like, yeah, you know, let's do a trade. You can have this, I can have that. You know, we'll have a good time. We'll make an exchange, and we'll help each other out.
So he basically hooked you on cigarettes.
Yes, but then later I also found out that wasn't actually my teacher. Thing was, I wasn't even in school at that point.
Oh my god.
I had all but dropped out.
Where were you?
I was in the back of the school.
So you were in school, but
not
in class.
Right. I wasn't actually in school. I was at the school, behind the school, and let's be honest, I had a little bit of the adult grapevine juice. Wasn't fully in my head. Bought cigarettes from a complete stranger who at the time I had, for whatever reason or another, believed to be my teacher. And the rest is history. From that point on, I had been addicted.
But you were in class every day. And that's what's important.
From that point on.
Yeah. We would see you around the schoolyard. Just hanging out. Looking all cool.
Yeah. I remember from that point on, Mrs. Jackson, she felt so sad for me in my state, she actually took me in and gave me an education.
Oh.
She paid for my tuition, and I bet that bitch feels pretty sorry because I have done nothing with it.
What a saint she was.
Oh,
Mrs. Johnson.
What a character.
Well, that's a story for another time. Let's get back to this story.
Yes. Yeah. The story at hand.
All right. As the quest continued to progress, he eventually found himself in a small inn on the outskirts of the kingdom, near the swamplands. It was towards the end of the night, and he was cooling his burning cheeks on the cool, albeit moist surface of the bar, when he heard a somewhat familiar voice broach his eardrums. "You're the prince, aren't you?" it inquired. At this, he looked up to see a figure, hooded in an emerald cloak, that he assumed to be the innkeeper, although the hood obscured the face of the woman questioning him, and only long, shimmering black hair could be seen pouring over her shoulders. Once Michael managed to pick his head up, letting out a pitiful groan as he did, he replied, "I know what it is you seek," said the innkeeper, nodding her head, pausing for long enough to make the young royalty think he should not respond. Damn, wow.
It's a bit of a long sentence there, friendo.
It's not that, I'm just...
You get to reading a long...
I'm just thinking about your adult grapevine juice. It's distracting
you need a little bit of that in your system right now.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Then you're a terrible influence.
Listen, it calms the nerves, it soothes the soul, and it gets you focused on what you want to do. But that being said, I can sympathize with you at this point, because I have read through that entire thing, actually, enunciating as I read, and it gets difficult. After you keep reading and reading, your jaw starts to get a little bit,
My tongue was cramping at the beginning of this.
Yeah,
it was really weird.
It happens.
I think it was like the position I was sitting. But I'll try this one more time, folks. And if I can't do it, then I quit.
Then Ben is taking over the story.
Yeah. That's exciting. I'm excited. I want to mess up now.
Oh, Christ alive.
"I know what it is you seek," said the innkeeper, nodding her head, pausing for long enough to make the young royalty think that he should respond, but cutting him off just as he began to, saying, "I assume that the last story you've heard of, the vessel, placed it somewhere along the Great East Peninsula, about 50 years ago." Michael hadn't heard this tale yet, but assumed it to be true and confirmed her beliefs, allowing her to go on. "Well, there is one more story that actually hits quite close to this very inn. You see, the last miserable soul who came into contact with this mysterious artifact wished only to be able to immortalize the image of his beloved in sculpture. This all worked out splendidly for his newly gifted artist, until one day his beloved perished in a terrible fire in their home, which also engulfed all of the works that he had made of her so far. His absolute agony over this loss, of course, only strengthened his desire to craft the face of his newly laid love. Yet, as he began carving into a slab of wood the face of his blue, Yet, as he began carving into a slab of wood, the finished product wasn't recognizable. No matter how many times he tried, he couldn't conjure the image of her face. This drove him insane, and he spent years traveling the lands far and wide, looking for anything that might inspire him. Yet it was all in vain, until eventually he came to this inn, where the last thing believed to be carved by him is at the end of the bar there. Michael had found the innkeeper's story far too long, and had half dozed off by the time she had finished with it, but the reference to something in his immediate vicinity caught his attention. He slid down a few chairs to look at what she was referring to, and almost fell right out of his seat as He slid down a few chairs to look at what she was referring to, and almost fell right out of the seat he had just entered. Carved into the surface of the bar, with deep contrasting lines, was the face of a woman, but this woman had something off about her. This was by no means a poorly rendered visage, but there was something distinctly not human about it. The eyes were absolutely devoid of life, and the face, although gorgeous and clearly feminine, was completely lacking hair. Not even an eyelash rested upon the eerie sculpture's lids. Perhaps what was more shocking than this was the words raggedly carved just below, in extreme juxtaposition to the portrait: solitude. What's up, pup? Oh, you're just scraping at the pages, aren't you? Do you want to see how long it is?
Continue.
Bless you. You have a hot date, Ben?
No.
Alright, well, why don't you just calm yourself?
Well, alright.
Ben and I had Mexican food tonight, so we're feeling burpy.
We're feeling everything that I just ate coming back up in gaseous bubbles seeping out of my throat. I'm sorry, I keep playing with that.
Yeah, stop playing with things. This is a sensitive mic. It makes noises.
Like that.
Like that, yeah. Wee wow, wee wow. Ben, stop reaching for things.
I thought I had more drink.
You're on drugs.
It seems like it, doesn't it?
No. Alright. When he finally managed to draw his eyes away from the face etched into the wood, he looked into the obscured one of the innkeeper. "Did you see the vessel?" he inquired emphatically, completely sobered now. "I didn't even meet that poor soul, but when I saw the carving, I knew it had to have been the man that I heard of," spoke the woman in a tone of surety. She looked down at the floor then. Michael assumed she was simply lost in thought, so he allowed the silence to linger. It lasted until she broke it once more, saying, "I think that I could help you find it if you wish." He agreed, worried that she might change her mind, and right as he did, she took him by the wrist and swiftly led him out into the darkness towards the swamps. The scene behind the bar remained empty until the prince jogged in to refill his flask with something noxious before heading off once more. The pair trudged for quite a long time before anything of note happened, and the deeper they ventured into the swamp, the greater the anxiety of the young prince became. He, more than a few times, partook of the flask in order to quench this feeling. However, it only proved to make him less sure-footed and decreasingly sure-minded. The innkeeper walked through the thickening swamp, looking for any clue as to where the forlorn artist may have gone. She searched every gnarled trunk with her sharp eyes, looking for the ridge of a nose or a curve of a lip, but to no avail. The odd pair continued to walk aimlessly into the crowd of foliage and moist earth until something caught Michael's foot and forced him to the ground. Unfortunately, the flask in his hand didn't allow him to brace his fall, and gravity forced his face deep into the earth. The flask did, however, allow him to ignore his pain and recover relatively quickly. When he pulled himself up, he saw a face looking back at him from the ground where it was imprinted into the face of a rock. "I think my head was just stuck in that stone," he said incredulously, looking up at his companion. Although the young man couldn't see it, due to the shadows obscuring the innkeeper's face, She squinted her eyes in disbelief at how dull-minded he was. She quickly dropped this expression when she looked down to where the prince had cleared the reeds away and revealed the same soulless face that had been carved into the inn's bar. The faces were almost identical, except for a few grim details, which may have been what forced the naive boy to believe he had made the mark. The entire portrait was rough-hewn and covered in streaks of coagulated blood, as if it had been scratched into the stone with only the artist's fingernails. Recovering, she looked up from the hellish depiction and noticed that there were footprints leading towards a drier portion of the swamp. This was the hint that she had been looking for, and without hesitation she darted off along the path made by the footprints. Michael, with a nasty combination of inebriation and a concussed mind, thought that he had been challenged to a race and picked himself up running. The prince was quite the physical specimen from a lifetime of training and quickly caught up and surpassed his opponent. His lead was short-lived, however, for not 20 paces after taking the lead, he plunged his foot down to find it crash straight through an exceptionally dry patch of earth. He tumbled a distance of twice his height and once again crashed down head first, but this time into hard stone rather than the soft mud of the swamp. Sounds bad. I think he's pretty dead.
By the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Took quite a tumble.
This will be like the second time we've heard of him hitting his head, like within like a page. But
I was beginning to wonder what had led him to be such a dim-witted individual, and I'm starting to see what it might be.
Yeah, there was mention of him like receiving multiple concussions in his youth, and when his sister played that terrible prank on him, which you can empathize with.
It makes you not see very good.
Ben is looking at me through the thickest of glasses, thicker than the bottom of Coke bottles.
It's actually kind
squinting with his beady eyes.
Sad
All
thing
color is almost drained from the sun bleaching it out of him.
Sad thing is, that's almost true. How bad my vision is. Actually, it's very true how bad my vision is.
It's completely true.
There's no
actually.
almost to this depiction. I can't see anything without my glasses. I'm like a sad
Velma.
Yeah, a sad male version of Velma. Except I don't have any.
I can't see without my glasses.
I don't go on drug-induced binges where I can hear dogs talking to me.
That's true. Lately. All right. Well, let's continue here.
I've stopped as best I could from taking any more of that adult grapevine juice.
Ben, you gotta live your life. I encourage it.
Sure enough.
You're of a consenting age. You should grab the bull by its horns.
Ride
it to Regina Shaw.
Rekindle my association with the demons of my past.
Well, not necessarily the demons.
You know what that stuff does.
You had some dark days, Ben.
The reason I stay away from that kind of garbage.
Okay.
That garbage trash.
That garbage trash. That's an old phrase.
Yes.
It's been around for a long time in literature, apparently. This is what we can draw from reading this story.
If Grandpa Jeremy's book has to say anything about it.
Yeah. Alright, well, after seeing the bumbling man in front of her crash through the earth, the woman in the emerald cloak searched along lower ground until she found the small mouth of a cave and crawled through it. The cave was completely made up of seamless stone, with a strange pattern of oblong shapes all along its surface. As she continued deeper, the cave grew wider and taller until she could crouch and eventually even stand with space above her head. All the while, these strange shapes in the cave's surface grew along with it. After walking for quite some time, she eventually saw light streaming down from the ceiling, and the body she sought lying limp on the cave's floor. With a heavy sigh, she approached the body to discover the prince's fate. As her hands neared him, his eyes suddenly flung open, causing the innkeeper to jump backwards. The cave was a blur of gray all around him, and although he had certainly sobered up by this point, the tremendous blow to the head had left his brain cloudier than it had been before. The two sat there without exchanging a word, until his vision cleared enough that he was able to recognize the woman in green standing in front of him.
This Michael fellow can withstand quite a bit of damage.
Yeah, I imagine him like just the body makeup of a linebacker, just like a large man,
thick skull, really heavy brow, kind of like a
Neanderthal,
kind of like a derpy fellow.
Derpy.
I can
see that.
Kind of a Larry to a George of characters in this woman. Of Mice and Men.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I was like, what are you talking about?
Which way do they go, George? Which way do they go? That's what I'm envisioning right now.
Oh, God. I appreciate you.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. My mom once compared me to Larry.
Really?
Yeah. I think this is a tad too personal, but I like to touch the hair of my significant others. It's a big thing for me. I like the ladies with long hair.
Understandable.
And I took a young woman home to my mother's house, and she said that I was just like Larry, petting the animals until they died.
I was about to say, are you taking this in a direction to tell me to admit to me that you were petting your girlfriend's hair so hard that you snapped her neck? Because that's what happened in the story you're alluding to.
Not in this occasion, Ben, but what I am saying is that my mother compared me to an animal murdering, mentally impaired man. One of the first times meeting a girlfriend. So.
Well, that is not a strong impression. Well, that's a very strong impression, but not one that you would really want to last. That being said, I think we can all say we're all very glad that your mother decided not to take the route of George by taking you to a lake and shooting you in the back of the head.
And we just spoiled Mice and Men. Tune in next time till we ruin books for you.
Folks, if you're listening to this for the literary content, you are sorely mistaken.
Then go home.
Yeah. This is not what we're here for.
We're here to read this book.
Yes.
Not other books.
Right?
We assume you've read every other book in the world.
Exactly.
Why else would you be listening to this?
The book that we have is not available to read, so we're giving it to you over the airwaves. That being said, we consider our audience to be of literary status, or
merit.
Literary merit.
Readers worth their salt.
That being said, they should all have read. You should all have read Of Mice and Men by this point.
Of Mice and Men.
Of Mice and Men. That sounded really weird. I was making an end.
That sounds like it's your story.
Yeah. Of Mice and Men. Of Mice and Men by this point in your life. It is, if not, I'm telling you right now, spoilers. Pause the podcast before we go any further.
I'm going to edit this and put the portion where you say spoilers.
Just like a 3-second pause. Just like a 3-second pause, like just abruptly in the story.
Spoilers.
Spoilers! Let me just continue on.
Yeah.
Not referencing what we're spoiling. Just spoilers.
Spoilers will happen soon.
Yes.
Alright, well.
Alright. Folks, thanks for sticking with us this entire time. We really appreciate.
See, I don't know how. Whatever. When the look of recognition grew across his face, the innkeeper said, "The vessel is deeper along here. I can feel it." She stood then and continued along the ever-growing cave, with the prince walking silently behind her. At a certain point along the path, the eerie truth struck her. Every time we stop, I can't read again.
Yeah.
At a certain point along the path, the eerie truth struck her. The pattern that covered the walls were faces, various noses, eyes, and lips, all of differing characteristics protruded from the dark, wet walls of the cave, surrounding the two with looks of anger and disappointment. As the cave's roof rose to heights that could accommodate a dragon, the spaces between the massive faces had smaller faces in them. These visages were incredibly accurate, as if a variety of giants and half-giants had painted their faces gray and stuck them together to form the walls and floor. The noses of the carvings eventually made it difficult to traverse the cave's bottom, to the point that Michael had to grip the emerald cloak that hung off of the woman's shoulders, to keep a hold of his already shaky balance. They traversed the wrinkles and ridges until they came across something as yet unseen. Gorgeous locks of hair were carved, spiraling and slivering in between the spaces left in between the portraits. Following these strands like the rope of Tullius, the pair continued on, eventually meeting the ultimate sculpture. Rising out of the cave's bottom was a face that was easily 3 times as large as any that they had seen so far, and infinitesimally more beautiful. The chin was the first part that they arrived upon, and climbing was no easy task, but they could feel the object of their desires growing nearer. Even in Michael's state, he managed to make it to the top, where the lips could be seen, parted in beautiful anguish. As they grew close enough to see the bottom of the mouth, what they saw was that it formed a basin filled with rainwater that had seeped through the holes where light entered from the roof. And just beneath the surface knelt a man, frozen in death's grip, in the act of scraping away at the stone as if he was trying to shape out teeth or a tongue. It didn't take long for them to realize that he wasn't using any tools. Instead, the skin was worn away on all of his fingers, save his thumbs, right down to the first joint. The exposed bone had also been worn down to form points that must have been perfect for executing the detail necessitated by his masterpiece. The two simply stood there in awe, just taking in the gruesome creature kneeled before them. They could have stood there forever if light reflecting off a metal surface hadn't caught the prince's attention. He looked to its source to find the object of his desires perched upon the top of the nose. Upon seeing this, he shook off the haze in his mind as much as one can shake off multiple concussions, and began the long hike up and around the face in order to climb the nose's bridge. As he reached the top, wiping sweat from his brow, he placed both of his hands upon the metallic silver object. He had finally found what he was searching for, and it was immaculate. He had found the vessel. It was a fat cylinder, without a top, in order to hold liquids, and was very smooth to the touch in the places that had not been affected by rust. Piercing 2 sides of the open end was a curved, skinny rod made out of the same material in a half-moon shape, with a piece of wood in the center that could be used as a handle. In a word, it was glorious. So enraptured he was that he only turned around quick enough to see who pushed him, as he began to fall off the nose of the artist's final work. As he fell, he saw Mona standing above him with a smirk upon her face and her emerald cloak around her shoulders. Dumbfounded, he stared up into the eyes which he had learned to despise as he continued to fall. "How did you get here?" he began to say, when his head met the ground for one final time. Once Mona was sure that her brother was no longer moving, she turned to retrieve the vessel, but as she turned around, she found that her prize had ended up under her foot. She realized this too late, and putting her weight on the round object, found herself tumbling down after her brother, her body crumpling as she hit bottom. That concludes it.
What would you say that the moral of the story is, Austin?
What would I say the moral of the story is, or what does the book say the moral of the story is?
Is there any difference?
Yes. Ben, what would you say the moral of the story is, without knowing?
Without knowing?
Without knowing. Without having seen it yet.
Don't trust women, because chances are it's your sister trying to kill you.
Were you shocked by that turn of events?
You know, I was curious where Mona had gone.
And like why she was mentioned in the beginning of the story and then just kind of disappeared.
Right. You know,
yeah.
Deceitful little, garbage trash. That little
trash.
That nitpicky little...
Tit-picky.
That's...
Dick flicky.
Stick rickety little poignant child had gone to, and I was like, I wonder where this little character went to, and I was so enamored by the character of the innkeeper just kind of showing up and helping this poor fellow
kind of like quest. Almost, she almost took almost like, I don't know what what the word for it is in literature, but other people who would be this would be like Yoda, Gandalf. It's like the all-knowing, like guide, like the teacher role. She almost took that till she pushed him off. Yeah, off the.
She was like, I was really appreciating what kind of character this kind-hearted innkeeper was until I realized that she really stepped into her role as a, lack of a better term, bitch, by kicking a
stupid man,
a Lenny off of a.
We were calling him Larry.
I was going to address that afterwards.
Not only were you calling him Larry, I called him Larry.
See,
too.
So if we're going to post this on SoundCloud, which I'm sure we are going to,
maybe I don't know if I'm going to post them on SoundCloud anymore. We'll talk about that at the end. We'll plug our plugs. We have plugs to plug.
Folks, just please be gentle. Be courteous when posting at that mark.
This is actually a pretty good segue to, you can find us on iTunes.
Yes.
And actually, like you probably won't know this because no one listened to us when we were on iTunes. We had no friends. But if you found us on iTunes or like listen to this on iTunes, then we would appreciate just leave some feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leave a review, and if it's not, you can star us. And if it's not in person, if you're not starring us in person, then you should give us 5 stars on iTunes.
Exactly.
Because you know what? We try.
Like, just think of how impressive our stories are and how much of an imprint your hand would leave. A 5-star on our backs for just the amount of padding that we deserve on our backs. And be like, I can't do this physically. Because I don't know where these bozos are.
1 star.
These lovable
for each
bozos.
finger.
Exactly.
And if you don't have 5 fingers, leave us how many fingers you have. And in the comment you should say,
I wanted this to be a 5-star.
If only.
If only.
If only.
If only the world worked this way.
If only it wasn't for the fire.
Okay. In a perfect world. But really, folks, we are looking for feedback, and I know every other podcast host says this, leave a comment, and, we really appreciate it, but, it's exciting to be able to put something like this out there, and we would really appreciate what you guys think of the book, and what we're, if there's any kind of comments, concerns, anything like that.
If you have any information, maybe you guys have this book too.
Yeah. We're looking for others.
Yeah, to join our crew of folks.
Join the hot commodity that is
the folks.
The We Found the Book podcast and the following of folks.
Yeah. But yeah, just we'd appreciate it. And if you do that, I'll come over and I'll hug you.
Yeah.
Just give me your address.
We will return the favor. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
But
snap, snap.
But yeah, that was just a good segue. But let's come back to talking about this. And yeah, when in the story do you think you realized it was the sister? Or you were thinking, where had she gone? Maybe you didn't know for sure, but you're like, oh, where'd the sister go?
It was a slow and gradual process of elimination to say, is this the kind of character that could become, somebody else who we refer to in the story as far as the sister went. I was reading it the first time and I was like, I don't want to believe this person who's being so kind to this fool could be his sister, who was played up to be pretty antagonistic. And when it kind of finally came to fruition, I was shocked still, but at the same time I was like, it was a possibility in the back of my head.
Yeah. I don't know if I picked up on that. I think I just kind of forgot about Mona.
Yeah.
Until I got to there, but it's good. I really like the cave visual.
Absolutely. That when I was reading it captivated.
Do you think that the wish that was granted for the vessel for the artist was to have these hands, sharp little fingers that could carve. And for those of you at home, I'm tiddling my fingers at Ben as I speak. But do you think that like that was his wish, or out of his insanity, it just dug away at his fingers until they turned into that?
I think honestly, excuse me. I think his wish was just be able to immortalize his loved one in a way that no other could, and he didn't have the potential to as an up and coming artist to be as accurate as he wished he could. And then when his loved one was around, he had that living proof and that living template to base all of his works on. And then during the tragedy that took his wife away from him, or his lover rather, he, out of desperation and fear, immediately took to creating the perfect image. And as true to life as the original models could have been, they weren't what he was looking for. They weren't the thing that he needed to be able to have to say, this will take the place of something that I have lost.
Yeah.
And that being the living, breathing incarnation of his lover, as well as all the rest of the the pieces that he had worked on. And then when he couldn't create that so perfectly, he drove himself into madness looking for that perfect, that perfect image of her. And the more and more he pushed himself to find that, the farther and farther away it got to it, to the point where the two characters in the story are now encased in a giant wall of screaming, terrifying faces.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Even at the end, he's, like, at his end, he was still digging out and trying to, like...
He never actually got to that point. Is what I got from that story.
Or maybe he... I thought, like, just, like, how much emphasis was put on the final piece and how large it was.
Yeah. To be able to...
And it really, I imagine, actually rising out. Like, the rest of the faces kind of set in, but this one, like, had, like, kind of a little bit of a neck, almost. To where they had to climb up the chin, and like so much worse. This one had hair. Like maybe
that was the thing he thought he was missing the entire
Or maybe
time.
like she died in a fire. Maybe she was like he had like the image of a burnt corpse stuck in his head.
The thing that really stuck with me too is that I don't know, the way I was reading it, it seemed that like when they were looking down at him, like he was in the water, like he was still scraping it out, and like he's like
alive.
No, like he was stuck there, like under the water, like trying to scrape out this image, and didn't care, about rain or death. He was just there in the water, like trying to scrape out a tooth or a tongue or something.
But what I was saying, actually, I think I just kind of stopped on my point, was that this was the one, like this is what he reached towards, and once he'd finished it, like none of the other faces, I imagine, have like inside of a mouth detail. And once he got there, he just didn't want to stop working on it.
He's like, this is going to be...
Like, he was trying to, like, tunnel out, like, an esophagus and, like, a stomach.
Lower intestine.
Ovaries.
Just a full body.
Yeah.
And afterwards, who knows?
What were you saying, though?
I find the imagery very powerful to think that a man could be driven to such madness to the point where he doesn't even fear for his own life, that he is taking his initiative into such great severity that he's just willing to be like, that he doesn't even recognize that he's dying while he's working on his piece. And then the image of him just frozen there, this raggedy corpse with, little nubs digging out a piece of an abandoned cave, to immortalize something that he lost. There's a lot of dark imagery there.
There is, and like it's kind of like a... Bittersweet isn't the right word. It's like it's beautiful yet horrible at the same time.
It's
and like isn't that a great way to describe love? All right, and with that, let's go to the actual moral, which our author is just known for his morals. Or by us.
Yes.
We don't know any. We don't know anyone else who's read this author. We don't even know his name. So if you have any information, once again, don't hesitate to share.
Yeah.
You actually reach us at wefoundabook@gmail.com. It's a way. But the moral of the story was always wear a helmet. Always.
And that's it.
That was the moral. What do you think of that? it pertains to it certainly. Yeah. The story pertains to Michael for sure.
It definitely has a place in everything there, you know. And honestly, hearing those always wear a helmet. Always hearing those 5 words at the end of that story makes me realize everything I've said. All that talk about, you know, dark imagery and
it was stupid.
It was stupid.
Stupid baloney talk.
It was completely inaccurate. The author, whoever he may be, dead or alive, is recognizing my thoughts and saying, Balderdash!
Yeah.
I needn't any of this information.
The words of a bumbling idiot.
He's like, you missed the point entirely, you Neanderthal. That's what I've taken away.
It's nice. I like that.
I'll say this one more time. Folks, if you ever come across a curious-looking pail in your lifetime, please take heed. For whatever you may do, whatever you may think might come of this curious vessel, take warning. I swear to God, your sister is sitting right behind you, and she's going to push you off a goddamn nose hill. That's all I have to say.
It's true. That's truth. You can take that home to your grandmamas and grandpapas.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all we really have to say about that story. It was Fate's Pail. Look it up on Audible or some shit. I don't know. Internet. Somebody. If you have any information about this book, please
feel free to contact us at wefoundabook@gmail.com.
Yeah. We'll be putting these out once a month on the 1st of the month. And if we get special, we might put them out on the 1st and the 15th, but probably not because we're not special. You can find us on iTunes, maybe SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter. WeFoundABook.com is a thing that you can go to, and it'll have links to all of our other things.
It's got pretty artwork that I myself drew, so please appreciate it. If we get enough of a following, maybe t-shirts. Maybe
Ben will draw something else.
Maybe if you send me a nice comment, I can possibly draw you something. But don't count on it, because I'm not that awesome.
I don't know if we said this already, but yeah, comments on iTunes. We've actually recorded this intro so many times because I suck and keep failing to record it properly.
We have multiple issues.
So, yeah, thank you for listening.
We always appreciate it, folks.
Have a good rest of your day, rest of your night, anything that's happening.
You know, if you're driving that night shift, you're listening to us on the road as a truck driver. Yeah. You know, we're here to keep you company.
How did you find us?
We can't even find ourselves at this point in our lives.
How?
Thanks for looking.
Thanks for listening.
And as always,
keep on